The Juraxians had expected Earth to fall within hours of their electromagnetic attack. Instead, 3 days later, Commander Vexilor paced the command deck, his normally blue scales flushing purple with frustration. "How are they communicating?" he demanded, slamming a clawed hand against the holographic display. "Our disruptors should have severed all electronic networks." Officer Kelta hesitated before responding. "They're using primitive methods, Commander. Physical messengers. Paper notes. Devices called walkie-talkies that operate on simple radio frequencies. Some are using something called Morse code with light signals." Vexilor's inner eyelids flickered in disbelief. "Absurd. No species reverts to obsolete technology in crisis. They advance or they surrender." The tactical screen showed the human resistance growing rather than diminishing. In Seattle, civilians had repurposed construction equipment into makeshift barricades. Throughout rural Texas, farmers were using agricultural drones to monitor Juraxian troop movements. In Mumbai, the subway system had been transformed into an elaborate underground command center. "Most troubling," continued Kelta, "is their familiarity with invasion protocols. They seem to anticipate our strategies." The intelligence officer brought up footage from a human dwelling, shelves lined with rectangular objects. "Books," the translator supplied, all featuring depictions of scenarios remarkably similar to the current invasion. Films, games, written stories, humans had been mentally rehearsing this moment for generations. "These are children's entertainment," Vexilor said incredulously, examining the images. "They prepare their young for planetary invasion through recreation?" "It appears so, Commander. And there's more." Kelta displayed footage of humans operating captured Juraxian technology with surprising ease. "They adapt to our interfaces within minutes. Their fiction has apparently explored countless possible alien technologies. Many of our systems operate similarly to devices they've already imagined." Outside Chicago, the landing party reported unexpected resistance. Civilians wielding improvised weapons had surrounded the scout ship. Most disturbing wasn't their firepower but their organization. They moved with surprising tactical discipline for non-military units. "They've been playing strategic games based on asymmetric warfare scenarios," explained the cultural analyst. "Millions of humans spend hours daily in simulated combat against technologically superior opponents. They've been training without realizing it." Commander Vexilor stared at the planet's night side glittering with lights, fewer than before the attack, but far more than there should be. Emergency generators, solar cells, and wind turbines kept human strongholds powered. Their communications persisted through improvised channels. Their resistance grew more coordinated by the hour. "We anticipated panic," Vexilor said softly. "We expected them to turn against each other in fear. This species was supposed to break easily." "They consume entertainment about their own extinction, Commander," said Kelta. "They find it enjoyable. They've imagined countless apocalypse scenarios, and in many of their stories they survive against impossible odds. This isn't just resistance, it's almost as if they've been waiting for us." Vexilor turned from the viewport, his decision made. "Send in the ground forces. Full deployment. We'll crush this resistance before their primitive ingenuity becomes truly problematic." But in the shadows of his consciousness lurked an unfamiliar sensation, one no Juraxian commander had felt during the 17 previous conquests: doubt. The Juraxian field commander Dexmore couldn't believe what his sensors were detecting. His elite squad, equipped with the finest battle armor in the 3 galaxies, was retreating from what appeared to be a middle school science fair. "Report," he demanded, mandibles clicking with agitation. What could possibly be driving back our advance units? The communications officer's voice crackled with static and what sounded suspiciously like human laughter in the background. "Sir, they've weaponized household chemicals. The humans combined common substances to create compounds that react with our exoskeleton coating. They're using pressurized water toys to deploy the mixture." Across the occupied territories, similar reports flooded in. A group of senior citizens in Florence had discovered that garden fertilizer, when heated to specific temperatures, emitted a gas harmless to humans but which fouled Juraxian breathing apparatus. University students in Cape Town found that certain frequencies of modified police whistles disrupted the aliens' neural implants, causing disorientation. Most concerning to the Juraxian High Command was the speed at which these discoveries spread. When human global networks were disabled, locals established courier routes using everything from bicycles to carrier pigeons. Information written on paper couldn't be hacked or jammed. Hand-drawn maps and instructions passed from community to community. In his command center, Vexilor reviewed footage of a particularly troubling encounter. A Juraxian patrol had entered what humans called a shopping mall in Singapore, only to find the building transformed into an elaborate trap. Store mannequins dressed as humans had drawn their fire, while actual defenders used the confusion to deploy improvised weapons from multiple levels. They're using tactics from entertainment media, his cultural analyst explained, displaying images from human action movies alongside footage of resistance fighters. These scenarios they've imagined for amusement have become their battle plans. What most confused the Juraxians was the lack of centralized command. Human resistance cells operated independently, yet somehow maintained strategic coherence. A captured resistance fighter had laughed when interrogated about their leadership structure. "There isn't one," she had said. "We just do what makes sense. When something works, we tell others. When it doesn't, we try something else." The concept was alien to Juraxian military doctrine, which relied on precise hierarchical command. Their tactical computers couldn't model a battlefield, where thousands of independent actors made decisions based on local conditions and immediate needs, rather than central directives. Perhaps most disturbing was the human capacity for humor in crisis. Resistance fighters painted mocking images of Juraxian commanders on walls. They created crude but effective weapons with names like Alien Tickler and Spacebug Zapper. They found joy in defiance itself. "Sir," reported Dexmer from the North American front, "they're adapting faster than we can develop countermeasures." A human female modified their primitive projectile weapons to fire capsules containing a compound that solidifies our visual sensors. She developed the technique yesterday. By today, fighters across 3 continents are using variants of the same approach. Vexilor stared at the tactical display, watching as more sections of occupied territory flashed with resistance. Alerts. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were learning, adapting, and most inexplicably, they seemed to be enjoying the challenge. "They don't fight like a species facing extinction," he murmured. "They fight like one discovering its potential." Dr. Sarah Chen didn't look up from her microscope when the door to the underground laboratory opened. The makeshift research facility, formerly a wine cellar beneath a university building, hummed with the energy of 24 scientists working with salvaged equipment. "Tell me you have good news," she said, eyes still fixed on the slide containing Juraxian tissue samples. Dr. Patel placed a tablet beside her showing data from field hospitals across 3 continents. "It's working better than we anticipated. The modified rhinovirus is spreading through their ranks like wildfire. Their quarantine procedures are failing because they don't understand how our microbes transmit." On the primary screen, satellite imagery showed Juraxian troops abandoning forward positions as infection rates climbed. The aliens had no concept of asymptomatic carriers or airborne transmission. Their medical protocols, designed for a species that evolved in a nearly sterile environment, proved catastrophically inadequate on Earth. "The beauty of it," said Dr. Rodriguez, examining bacterial cultures, "is that we're not even creating bioweapons. We're just introducing them to what Earth has had for millions of years." Outside the lab, volunteers carried carefully prepared packages into the occupied zones. Ordinary food containing harmless human probiotics that wreaked havoc on Juraxian digestive systems. Resistance fighters contaminated alien equipment with common soil bacteria. Children released bags of pollen near ventilation systems of alien outposts, triggering cascading allergic reactions in troops who had never evolved histamine responses. The Juraxian medical bay orbiting Earth, Chief Medical Officer Zeltor faced a crisis unlike any in recorded history. 3/4 of the invasion force reported symptoms ranging from respiratory distress to neural inflammation. The sterile chambers designed to treat battlefield injuries now overflowed with troops suffering from conditions no Xeraxian physician had ever encountered. We identified over 400 distinct pathogenic organisms in the latest samples, he reported to Commander Vexilor. Our immunological databases cannot keep pace with cataloging them, let alone developing countermeasures. What terrified the Xeraxian Medical Corps wasn't just the diversity of Earth's microbiome, but the resilience of humans living among these invisible threats. Humans casually touched surfaces teeming with bacteria, breathed air filled with spores, and consumed food containing billions of microorganisms, all without apparent harm. They're not just surrounded by these organisms, explained the exobiologist. They're composed of them. Trillions of microbes live within each human, forming symbiotic relationships. Their bodies are ecosystems, not isolated biological units, like ours. Back in the underground lab, Dr. Chen finally looked up from her microscope, a grim smile on her face. We've confirmed it. The cellular structure of their respiratory system cannot develop immunity to our common cold variants. Each exposure weakens them further. Dr. Patel shook his head in amazement. All those millennia of cursing our vulnerability to disease, and it turns out to be our greatest strength. Every pathogen that ever made us sick helped prepare our immune systems for this moment. On the tactical display, more Xeraxian positions showed signs of abandonment as troops retreated to orbital platforms, seeking escape from Earth's invisible defenders. The invasion force that had expected to face primitive weapons instead confronted an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't understand, and couldn't defeat: the collective microbial heritage of an entire planet. We don't just live on Earth, murmured Dr. Chen, watching the alien retreat. In a very real sense, Earth lives within us, and it's fighting back. The Xeraxian interrogation chamber was designed to break any sentient being's resolve. Yet Commander Vexilor watched in frustration as the human prisoner, a history professor captured leading resistance fighters in Berlin, showed no signs of submission after 3 days of questioning. You must understand your situation is hopeless, Vexilor said, mandibles clicking with irritation. Your major cities are occupied. Your militaries are scattered. Rational beings accept defeat when the statistical probability of victory approaches 0. Professor Elena Kuznetsov smiled despite her bruised face. Have you studied human history, Commander? Irrelevant. Your past cannot change your present circumstances. But it explains them. Her eyes held a peculiar light that unsettled him. The Spartans at Thermopylae knew they would die to the last man. The defenders of Masada chose death over surrender. During your initial attacks, civilians in Warsaw formed resistance units named after the 1944 uprising, an event where 200,000 humans died fighting against overwhelming odds. The professor leaned forward. Do you know what connects these events? They all failed militarily. Yet we remember them millennia later while forgetting countless easy victories. This made no sense to the Xeraxian mind. Victory was the sole metric of success. Any other outcome was failure, best forgotten. In the adjacent chamber, Dr. Zalvin, the defected Xeraxian psychologist, explained this cognitive disconnect to human intelligence officers. Your species processes defeat differently, he said, gesturing to neural scans comparing human and Xeraxian brains. When Xeraxians face impossible situations, our logic centers override emotional responses. We calculate survival probabilities and act accordingly, even if that means surrender. Pointed to the human brain patterns. Your species activates both emotional and logical centers simultaneously. You recognize the rational impossibility of victory, while emotionally rejecting it. This contradiction should paralyze decision-making, but instead, it generates your most creative solutions. The human officer frowned. Are you saying we fight hardest when we should logically give up? Precisely. It makes no evolutionary sense, yet it's undeniably effective. You convert despair into determination through narratives, stories that transform defeat into meaningful sacrifice. Your literature celebrates characters who perish for principles. Your history venerates lost causes that inspire later victories. Across occupied territories, resistance leaders exploited this psychological difference. They implemented strategies designed to confuse rather than defeat, striking decoys while evacuating civilians, broadcasting contradictory messages, leaving supplies where Juraxians would find them. The logical Juraxian command structure, trained to respond to clear patterns, found itself paralyzed by actions that followed no discernible military doctrine. Back in the interrogation chamber, Professor Kuznetsov watched understanding dawn in Vexilor's eyes. Your species can't win, he insisted, but with less conviction. Winning and not losing are different concepts to us, she replied. The universe operates by physical laws, Commander. But humans operate by stories. And in our stories, the oppressed always rise, the outnumbered always stand, and the seemingly defeated always find a way. She smiled again. Your invasion became part of our story the moment your ships appeared. And in this narrative, you were never the heroes. Later, reviewing the exchange, Vexilor realized with growing unease that human resistance wasn't just a tactical problem. It was a philosophical one. The Juraxians had conquered worlds by breaking their rational will to resist. But how does one defeat an enemy whose defeat only strengthens their resolve? Lieutenant Kirax knew she was committing a serious infraction by removing her neural dampener. But the human music called to her in ways she couldn't explain. The harmonies created patterns her species had never conceived. Mathematical relationships that produced inexplicable emotional responses. In the privacy of her quarters aboard the orbital command station, she replayed the confiscated recording for the 14th time. The humans called it classical music. Bach's Cello Suite No. 1. The single-stringed instrument produced tones that seemed to bypass her logical centers and touch something deeper. A rapid knock at her door startled her. She quickly reattached her neural dampener before opening it to find her bunkmate, Medical Officer Terval. I haven't reported you, Terval said quietly, but others have noticed your interest in human cultural materials. Kirax tensed, preparing for arrest. Instead, Terval revealed a small data crystal. Human visual art, she whispered. Paintings from something called museums. I've been studying them for research purposes, of course. The two Juraxians exchanged a look of understanding. They weren't alone. Throughout the invasion force, similar scenes played out in secret. A weapons officer collected human poetry. A tactical specialist recreated human dance movements in private. Surveillance technicians exchanged human films rather than reporting them. Each exposure to human culture created ripples of forbidden curiosity. In a secure briefing room, Commander Vexilor reviewed alarming statistics with his loyalty enforcement team. Defections have increased 342% in the past 60 days, the chief enforcer reported. Most concerning is that elite units show higher defection rates than standard troops. The more intelligent the soldier, the more susceptible to human cultural contamination. The pattern was unprecedented in Juraxian military history. Previous conquests saw occasional defections based on fear or pragmatism, but these soldiers were defecting because of attraction to human ideas. Their concepts of individual choice and personal freedom are mimetic pathogens, the psychological warfare expert explained. Our society is structured around collective efficiency and assigned purpose. Humans build their culture on concepts we deliberately engineered out of our species. Individual self-determination, emotional expression, creative divergence. In the ruins of Rio de Janeiro, Kirax finally made her decision. After months of secretly consuming human culture, she abandoned her post during a routine patrol, surrendering to a resistance cell led by a former music teacher. She expected execution. Instead, they offered conversation, asking about her homeworld, her experiences, her thoughts. No Juraxian had ever asked for her personal opinions before. 2 weeks later, she found herself sitting in a makeshift classroom, teaching 20 humans about Juraxian biology, while they taught her about something called watercolor painting. The exchange felt dangerous, revolutionary, and more meaningful than anything in her 40 cycles of existence. Your species removed choice to increase efficiency, the resistance leader explained. But humans discovered that choice actually enhances adaptation. When millions make individual decisions, we explore possibilities no central authority would consider. That night, Kirax used human pigments to create her first artwork, a blend of Juraxian precision and human expressiveness. Looking at her creation, she understood why her superiors feared human culture. It didn't destroy, it transformed. It didn't conquer, it liberated. Ideas, her human teacher had said, are the one resource that grows when shared. As defections multiplied across the occupation force, this truth became the Juraxian command's most urgent crisis. How does one fight an enemy whose most powerful weapons aren't weapons at all, but invitations? Dr. Miguel Santos stood in the hangar of what had once been a commercial airport outside Tokyo, now transformed into humanity's most advanced research facility. Around him, teams of engineers, programmers, and physicists swarmed over a captured Juraxian scout ship. Unlike previous human reverse engineering efforts, this wasn't about understanding alien technology, it was about improving it. They follow a linear development path, he explained to the International Oversight Committee touring the facility. Each technology builds methodically upon the last. But humans, he gestured to where a teenager from Mumbai was reconfiguring the alien propulsion system using principles from quantum computing. We make intuitive leaps across disciplines. We connect unrelated fields. The committee watched as a team of automotive engineers from Detroit demonstrated their modifications to the alien vessel's maneuvering thrusters. By applying principles from high-performance racing engines, they'd increased the ship's agility by 43%. The Juraxians developed their technology over thousands of years of careful iteration, continued Dr. Santos. We're rewriting their work in months because we're not constrained by their thinking patterns. Across the facility, similar breakthroughs emerged daily. A chef from New Orleans discovered that adjusting the flavor molecules in military rations could boost neural response times. Video game developers from Seoul reprogrammed Juraxian targeting systems to operate 30% faster, using algorithms designed for multiplayer contests. In his orbital command center, Commander Vexilor received the most disturbing report of the war. Human technological advancement has accelerated beyond all projected models, his chief science officer stated. They aren't just copying our technology, they're reimagining it. Their hybrid designs combine our principles with approaches we never considered. The tactical display showed footage of modified human aircraft evading Juraxian interceptors. The human pilots flew with a creativity no simulation could predict, while their vessels, ordinary aircraft enhanced with salvaged alien components, performed maneuvers Juraxian engineers had deemed theoretically impossible. How? Demanded Vexler. Their scientific understanding was centuries behind ours when we arrived. Their innovation process is fundamentally different, explained the science officer. We perfect technologies before implementation. They deploy imperfect solutions immediately, then improve through rapid iteration. Their decentralized approach means thousands of parallel development paths rather than our sequential model. Most alarming was what happened when human advances failed. Where Juraxian culture viewed failure as waste to be avoided, humans incorporated failed experiments into new approaches. Nothing was discarded. Not materials, not concepts, not even mistakes. In a laboratory beneath the ruins of Cambridge University, Dr. Jessica Wong held up a small device that combined Juraxian energy principles with Earth materials. Their power cells operate at 98% efficiency, she told her team. Ours now reach 115%. They designed for stability. We're designing for controlled instability. Her colleague, a quantum physicist, shook his head in amazement. They spent centuries perfecting each technology. We're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, then building on whatever works. Outside, the first squadron of human-modified interceptors took to the skies over London. Their engines combined Juraxian antimatter principles with human superconductors. Their weapon systems paired alien energy projection with targeting algorithms borrowed from weather prediction models. As Vexilor watched human innovation outpace his species' millennia of development in mere months, he confronted an unsettling realization. The Juraxians had mastered technology, but humans mastered adaptation itself. And in the race between perfection and evolution, evolution held the unstoppable advantage. Commander Vexler stood frozen before the Galactic display, watching as warning indicators flashed across formerly pacified sectors. The holographic map showed something unprecedented in Jiraxian conquest history: coordinated rebellion across multiple subjugated worlds. "Confirm this data," he ordered, mandibles clicking with agitation. "These patterns cannot be coincidental." His intelligence chief's voice wavered. "Confirmed, Commander. Resistance activities on Zalara 9 began precisely 42 days after we detected the first human transmission reaching their system. The Batraxis uprising initiated 39 days after similar contact. The pattern repeats across 7 formerly stable territories." The humans had achieved what no conquered species had managed in 3 centuries of Jiraxian expansion. They had united the oppressed. Aboard the modified Earth vessel, Prometheus, Captain Elena Reyes led the first human diplomatic mission to make contact with the silicon-based Praxians. Their crystalline bodies reflected the ship's lights as they examined the humans with multifaceted eyes. "Your methods confuse us," the Praxian elder communicated through the translator. "You bring no warships, yet speak of resistance. You offer cooperation between different species when biological logic suggests competition." Captain Reyes smiled. "On Earth we have a concept called mutualism, different species working together for shared benefit. The Jiraxians see the galaxy as a hierarchy to be dominated. We see it as a network to be connected." She displayed holographic images of Earth's ecosystems: coral reefs where thousands of species coexisted, forests where plants and animals formed interdependent relationships, human cities where diversity created resilience. "Our planet taught us that the strongest systems are not the most uniform but the most diverse," she explained. "The Jiraxians conquered by isolating worlds. We resist by connecting them." The Praxian Leadership Council vibrated in their equivalent of astonishment. 30 years under Jiraxian rule had trained them to view other species as either threats or resources. These humans suggested another possibility: alliance without assimilation. Back in the Jiraxian command center, Vexlor's most trusted analyst delivered the devastating assessment. "Our conquest model is predicated on quelling resistance movements individually," she explained. "We never anticipated simultaneous uprisings. Our troop deployment algorithms cannot compute optimal distribution across this many fronts." More troubling than the tactical challenge was the methodology. The resistance movements on each world displayed distinct characteristics tailored to local conditions and species capabilities, yet shared core strategic principles unmistakably human in origin. "The aquatic Melosians are using sound-based weapons inspired by human music theory," reported the intelligence officer. "The hive mind colonies on Batraxis have adopted individualized tactical units modeled after human sports teams. The theoretical framework underlying these approaches did not exist in our databanks before human contact." What made the human approach so infectious was its adaptability. Unlike the rigid Jiraxian doctrine imposed identically across conquered worlds, humans shared principles rather than prescriptions, allowing each species to develop resistance methods suited to their unique biology and culture. "They don't demand others become like them," observed the Jiraxian cultural analyst with reluctant admiration. "They encourage others to become more fully themselves, but in coordination with different species." Vexler stared at the display, showing rebellion indicators spreading like a contagion across formerly subdued territories. The humans had turned the greatest strength of the Jiraxian Empire, its uniform approach to conquest, into its critical vulnerability. Each subjugated world now represented not an asset, but a potential new front in an exponentially expanding conflict. They fight differently, he realized. Not to dominate, but to liberate. Not to control, but to connect. The Grand Hall of the Jiraxian High Council had never hosted representatives of a defeated species. For 3,000 years, this chamber had received only tributes and surrenders. Yet today, the councilors watched with mandibles twitching nervously as Captain Elena Reyes and her diplomatic team walked calmly to the center of the chamber, entirely unarmed. 5 years after their invasion of Earth began, the Juraxians had been forced into an unprecedented retreat. Their once mighty empire now faced coordinated resistance across 17 former territories. Their technological advantage had evaporated. Their military doctrine had failed against human unpredictability. "We expected threats," stated the High Counselor, massive pincer appendages clicking with tension. "We prepared for demands of reparation or surrender. Instead you request dialogue. Explain your purpose." Captain Reyes smiled, a gesture the Juraxians still found unsettling in its ambiguity. "We come with an invitation, not an ultimatum. The stellar network of free worlds welcomes all species who agree to its founding principle: mutual respect for sovereignty and diversity." The counselors exchanged glances of confusion. Their tactical analysts had prepared them for human vengeance. Their strategic models had predicted demands for Juraxian territory or technology. No simulation had suggested this outcome. "You offer us membership?" The High Counselor's translator struggled to convey his bewilderment. "After we attempted to conquer your world? This defies logical response patterns." "Humanity's history is filled with former enemies becoming allies," Reyes explained. "We've learned that lasting peace comes not from domination, but from transformation. We don't want to defeat the Juraxian Empire. We want to help it evolve." As the delegation departed, leaving behind their proposal, they activated thousands of small devices throughout the Juraxian homeworld. Unlike weapons, these cultural transmitters began broadcasting Earth's greatest artistic, philosophical, and scientific achievements to the general population. Juraxian security forces scrambled to contain the transmissions, but found their efforts frustrated by the human approach. Each device operated independently, adapted to local conditions, and used frequencies that shifted according to patterns inspired by Earth bird songs. In the privacy of their dwellings, young Juraxians experienced something their society had engineered away generations ago: curiosity. They encountered human music that created emotional responses their logical minds couldn't explain. They absorbed stories about individuals making choices that defied authority for principles beyond efficiency. Most dangerous to the established order were human scientific papers proposing alternative social organizations, systems that balanced collective needs with individual development, producing innovations no purely hierarchical structure could match. 3 months later, the first protests emerged in Juraxian educational centers. Students questioned the rigid career assignments that had governed their society for millennia. Scientists proposed research into emotional expression. Artists, a concept previously unknown in their culture, created works blending Juraxian precision with human expressiveness. Commander Vexilor, now leading the emergency response to this cultural contamination, realized the full dimensions of the human threat too late. "They never needed to destroy us," he told the increasingly divided council. "Their weapon was far more sophisticated than annihilation. They made us question ourselves." A junior counselor, from a generation more exposed to human ideas, dared to speak. "Perhaps questioning is not a weakness but an evolution. The evidence suggests human societies advance through internal challenge, not despite it." As debate erupted, itself an unprecedented occurrence in the consensus-driven council, Vexler recognized the ultimate human victory. The Juraxians had encountered countless species across 3 galaxies, changing each through conquest. For the first time, they had met a species that changed them instead, and the transformation had only begun.